Dr. Raywat Deonandan is an epidemiologist at the University of Ottawa and is on the line right now. How you doing, Doctor?
How are you?
You probably did not struggle with colored side in or out. You probably knew that.
Yeah, the blue side goes out.
Okay.
It doesn't really matter, to be honest. As long as you're wearing something over your mouth, that's what matters.
Yeah, because a lot of people are just wearing cloth, right? Homemade.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I feel a little less stupid, but not a whole lot. 1% infection rate. How confident are you in those numbers? Is that accurate, or is it such a small number that whether it's 1 or 7, it's about the same?
Well, I'd be surprised if it were over 5. And if it's the fact that it's under 5, it gives me some confidence that it's probably in the right ballpark. So it is surprising, though, that it is so small. We think that for the country as a whole, it's probably between 4 and 5% for a lot of reasons. We don't know for sure, obviously. And for those parts of the world for which we do have accurate estimates, like New York and Italy and parts of California, they're scratching 15%, but they really experienced a severe aspect of this disease. New York went through hell. Ottawa did not go through hell. So I was expecting 4 or 5%. 1% is pretty low, and that's good and bad, depending on how you want to look at it.
Right. Well, the good news is we did a really good job of controlling the infection, right? And if we saw how many people ended up in hospitals at 15%, imagine would have been the same here, right? So 1% of the disease spread is why we didn't get overwhelmed.
That's exactly right. Now, there's other factors at play. Places like New York, they have a largely unwell population having to do with the American healthcare system. Places like Italy have a higher age demographic, and so they're a little more susceptible. But all those things kind of wash out in the large numbers, and Ottawa did a very good job in keeping our case load down, which I think is the right strategy. You've got other parts of the world that are seeking infection in an attempt to get to herd immunity, but that comes at an enormous human cost. So we did a good job, and I think we can keep on doing this good job as the economy unfolds.
You think we can keep it at that very low number, though, even as we get on more buses and more trains and more people go back to the office? You think it's possible to do that?
I think it's totally possible for a number of reasons. One, we understand this disease better, not well, but better. We understand that it is driven by large super-spreading events, big indoor gatherings like churches and parties and bars and things like that. It's not driven by picnics necessarily or family barbecues if people keep their distances. And the masks really make a difference, we're learning. So if everyone's wearing a mask on the transit system, as is now required in Ottawa, that's going to help a lot. And it can't be underestimated. And so I encourage everyone to really take that seriously. If we can get 70% or higher of the population to wear masks regularly, this can be well controlled, in my opinion.
And if we count on that as a way of making sure that we stay healthy, we're really banking entirely then on a vaccination, aren't we? Or maybe vaccination and a strong treatment or some combination of the two. We're really counting on medical science because at 1% over the last 3 or 4 months, herd immunity would be years away.
That's exactly right. And as well, herd immunity may only last like a couple of months. We don't know. The data is unclear on that.
And with numbers this small, herd immunity could start to end for people even as others are getting it, right?
That's exactly right. So assume everyone got it today, and everyone's immune for, let's say, 2 months. Then we do this all over again in the fall. That's not fun. So, yeah, we are banking a little bit on medical science. A treatment will come before a vaccine. Treatments are already on the way. There's also a small chance it may mutate into non-lethality. We've seen that in some other cases as well. So there are a lot of moving parts here. What we can control for, we should control for. So what can citizens do to keep themselves safe? Again, physical distance, hand hygiene, wear a mask, don't go to large gatherings. Simple things to allow us to live a regular life.
But a lot of people consider mass gatherings to be regular life, right? There are whole industries built around people going to concerts and movies and, right? I mean, that's a big part of our economy, and people are sitting at home unemployed and money is not being spent. So how do we do those mass gatherings safely, or are they simply off the table until we have that cure and or vaccine?
I feel they're probably off the table unless you just want to restrict them to people who have had the disease and have recovered from it. So that maybe in the future we'll have separate events for people who have expressed immunity. Or if we can have really good distancing at a concert, really good plexiglass barriers, really good masks and face masks being worn by everybody, or a really good treatment that we can rely upon if you get sick, then we have some play here. But I think the safe thing to do is to just enjoy those aspects of the economy that we are confident will keep us safe. And the other aspects that unfortunately lead to some unemployment for some individuals have to be accommodated with some government investment, possibly. As a public health person, I want to see people being healthy and happy and confident and unafraid. And the best way to do that is to, again, engage in these standard public health tropes, but as well have people take responsibility and be partners in this endeavor. And the best way to do that is to give them the powers to express themselves in the economy, like through mask wearing and physical distancing.
That's a small needle to thread, though, isn't it? When you want people to be confident, and confidence can lead to overconfidence, right? That feeling of, I look at that number, 1%, and yesterday, 1 new case in Ottawa. You look at that number, it's easy to say, you know what, I'm no longer afraid to go to the grocery store. Now, if you're a responsible person, you act like everybody has it still, right? Or that you have it, or you could give it to everybody. You behave that way. You stay apart, you wear your mask. If you can't distance, if you have symptoms, even if it's a cold, you don't take a chance, you stay home. I can do all of those things. But it's hard once people start to think it's safe, right? It's because it's easier to behave in a way that protects you and your family directly. It's easier to do that and make the sacrifice than it is for some guy named Bob that I don't even know to make that sacrifice to protect him.
I think of it like defensive driving. We know that driving is dangerous. It's the biggest killer of most people in a non-pandemic year, but we still go on the highway and drive our cars. We wear seatbelts because that's required of us at public health and minimizes the chances of death and disability. We also avoid that horrible guy speeding in the next lane. We get out of his way. So we're not terrified to be out and about. We're not assuming there's an accident around the corner, but we're taking the steps to keep us and everybody else safe. So there is precedent in society for everyone to be responsible and to adhere to public health guidelines like not speeding and not ignoring a seatbelt. So I have confidence that we can do it. It simply takes a psychological shift in what's required of us in terms of social responsibility.
So this number, 1%, that can cut both ways, after talking to you, I feel like it's actually more good news than bad news, because even if we do have a second wave and we start to see more people getting sick in Ottawa, we've done it once. We can figure out again how to keep that number really low, because 1% is a pretty big success rate. And you think we can do that without a total shutdown of the economy, or do you foresee, if the wave comes as strongly as it did in the spring, late winter, early spring, will we have to go back to the same measures?
We've seen other societies do it. We've seen Taiwan and South Korea manage to open their economies despite having a prevalent disease. So to answer your question directly, is 1% good news or bad news? It's good news. It's always better news not to have sick people. Right? It's a strange mindset that we want to have infected people running around. I don't really understand that fully. So, but I have to be optimistic and see that we are doing so much and we are communicating so much to the public and giving them tools like masks and distancing in order to keep them safe. And we've seen other societies successfully stay open. So I have every expectation that we can do it, whether we will do it.
What do you think's happening in those U.S. states, though, where they've opened early, which is can be difficult, right, if you go too soon and too many people are infected. But some that have opened early are not having a resurgence. Others look like the beginning of a resurgence. What do you think the difference is there?
There's a few things going on. One is that there are different climates happening, so people are spending less or more times outdoors. Second is that there's a data issue. Some states, we actually don't collect the data very well and don't communicate it well, so there may be some hidden issues. Third is there is something in the population that may lead to immune factors that we don't fully understand yet. Some people call this the dark matter of immunity. So why do some societies like Germany have a lesser caseload than their neighbor Austria, for example. Right? There's similar societies, but the disease is penetrating at a different rate. So there's so many moving parts that we don't fully understand. Population density, geography, the rate at which the seeding happened, or even the timing of decisions being made seem to play a big part in how to manage this disease. So all I wish to say is this is an unfolding drama, and we don't know the outcome until the third act, and we are still in the first part of the second act.
Well, I was going to wrap up, and now you got me curious again, because this is interesting. We're patting ourselves on the back for the 1% infection rate in Ottawa, but isn't it also possible that a big part of that is the dark matter you talked about, this immunity that can exist in some societies? And I've read that it could be a version of the common cold, which is a coronavirus, is offering some immune protection for some people. So is it possible that something swept through Ottawa previously? A lot of us got a common cold or some other sickness that's protecting us, and it's not as much about how we behaved. We just kind of got lucky.
I think it's possible in some societies. I don't think that's the case in Ottawa at all. I think we locked down early, and so a lot of us just were not exposed to it. So I would not put a lot of weight on this hidden immunity possibility. It's still speculative science. So let's focus on what we actually do know. We know this is an explosive infectious disease and that everyone is still at risk because it's unlikely that we have immunity to it. And a large proportion will suffer, and a proportion still will die of it. So let's not minimize the possibilities of getting sick from this. Having said that,
I also think you minimized another thing. You talked about those U.S. states that reopened. You didn't mention it. Maybe we're just being Canadian and nice. But I think part of what we might be seeing is in some states, people are just saying this was exaggerated. It's a conspiracy. It's no big deal. I think some of it is just behavior. Some people are being more careless than others. Some states, the public is being more compliant with the rules than others.
Absolutely true. And you're going to see how this plays out in their data. They're going to suffer, the United States will, in the next couple of months, unfortunately. And I wish they wouldn't, but some bad things are happening down there, I think, disease-wise. But again, this is early on in the pandemic still, and many things could still happen.
Thanks, Doctor. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Dr. Raywat Deonandan, an epidemiologist at the University of Ottawa.